This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go. Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. Staff writer Richard Sims on deck with Cruise News. President of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilkin, is here to talk about a couple of stories sent to our tip line and a review of MSC Lirica. But first, this week's Cruise News. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
Kicking things off with news about Royal Caribbean's next ship.
So we're talking about this third ship in the Icon class. And some of you in the audience, because you're very smart, are probably saying, wait, isn't there only one Icon class ship sailing? And you're right, there is right now. But the first in the class is the Icon of the Seas, which launched last year to much fanfare. This summer, they will be rolling out Star of the Seas, which will begin sailing out of Port Canaveral, aka Orlando, in August. Now we know that the third ship in the Icon class will be named Legend of the Seas. Bookings go on sale this week. The ship will be sailing out of Fort Lauderdale year-round starting in November of 2026. But it is important to know, we've been talking a lot lately about maiden voyages and when they get bumped and when it's not really a maiden voyage. And it's important to know that these sailings out of Florida will not technically be the maiden voyages, because before coming to Fort Lauderdale, the ship is going to spend a few weeks sailing out of Barcelona. So those will technically be the first sailings of the ship. As for what we can expect of the ship, aside from the things that we've already come to expect from this particular class, we don't really know. They are saying, that they will roll out more details in the months to come. We've certainly got plenty of time. So to put it in soap opera terms, tune in tomorrow.
And speaking of Royal Caribbean, one of their ships is dealing with a stowaway situation, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
Yeah, Allure of the Seas has not one but two stowaways on board, but they're being cut some slack because they're awfully darn cute. Also because, in case you haven't figured it out, they're not humans. It's assumed that these owls flew on board just before the ship departed from Miami on February 10th. And then it had a series of sea days, so they were basically kind of stuck on board. Needless to say, this caused quite a bit of excitement for the guests. One posted to social media that they saw them and thought, oh, look, fake birds, like animatronics, as if this was a Disney ship or something. Mm-hmm. But no, they're real. Eventually, the crew members were able to collect them and put them in a temporary shelter for their own protection, and they can be released when the ship docks. If this sounds familiar, that is because this isn't the first time owls have stuck on board for a free cruise. A year or so ago, we reported that the same thing happened on Oasis of the Seas. I guess Royal is a favorite among cruising owls, which are different than cruising ducks.
And the historic ocean liner SS United States is officially on the move.
There have been a lot of delays. This has been a long time in coming. In fact, even just in the last week or two, there were delays. But supposedly, if things went as planned, as you're listening to this, the SS United States, which holds the record for the fastest transatlantic crossing, is on her way to Alabama. Now, you're probably saying, wait, I thought she was going to Florida. And she is. But first, she has to go to Alabama, where she'll undergo what they call remediation. That basically means they'll strip anything from it that would be bad for the environment once the ship is sunk. They'll strip out a lot of the wiring. They'll take out some of the stuff on the bridge, that kind of thing. Then she'll continue to Florida, where she'll be sunk and become basically a scuba diving destination.
And on Wednesday, Carnival gave I guess we'll call it a progress update and some more info about Celebration Key, their private place in the, Freeport, Bahamas, right?
We are super excited about this. It's about 5 months away from Celebration Key being opening. And obviously Carnival is excited too. I mean, they should be. They spent, this is a rough estimate, but somewhere around $46 gajillion on building this vacation mecca. The video, which you can find on cruiseradio.net, features Carnival Cruise Line President Christine Duffy hanging out with the construction crew as they tour the 5 different portals. By the way, apparently portal is going to be the travel industry buzzword of 2025 because Celebration Key is going to have 5 of them. Epic Universe is, when it opens, is going to have a bunch of portals. So portal is definitely the buzzword this year. Anyway, my favorite part of this video they just released is we get to see Christine Duffy opening up this giant water spigot to fill one of the lagoons. It's just kind of cool to see the water come. It's sort of like when they do dry docks and they refill the space in which the ship is sitting. A fun fact, the lagoons here are going to cover 7 acres and contain about 7 million gallons worth of water. These will be freshwater lagoons, which they're achieving by using a desalination system to convert seawater into freshwater. It's going to be kind of cool. The main center of this is a castle that's 10 stories tall. So if you're having visions of perfect day, yes, it's going to be sort of similar to that. We'll have to see how things fall out with pricing, but it's going to be very cool. We're 5 months away from it starting.
And if you're doing one of those Canada, New England sailings, it's going to cost you a little bit more if your cruise port involves Boston.
Which, you know, most of these do. I've sailed a couple of times out of New York City and done the northern route where you stop at like Boston. In fact, when I did the Queen Mary last July, Boston was one of our stops. So it looks like the Boston Port Authority has approved a new cruise fee schedule, which will cost $15 per person by the end of the decade. The fee's going to go up $3 a year between now and 2030. So, you know, not a lot, $3, but as we always say, that's $3 per person. So, you know, you multiply that by however many people in your party and then multiply it by however many people on the ship. And that's a nice little chunk of change that's going to Boston. We're seeing this more and more. You know, it's one of the biggest stories that we've seen thematically over the last year is the fact that more and more ports are raising their fees. And it's often not just a one-time thing like it is here. It's like, okay, we're going to go up $3 this year, then $3 next year. So if you look at that, I mean, that's a nice chunk of change, especially 5 years from now when it'll be $15 higher than it is now. And
one cruise line has a new way for you to pay them.
I'm kind of thrilled about this because Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, so basically all of Norwegian, the ships that sail under Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, they are now going to have a partnership that allows you to pay using PayPal. I am a huge fan of PayPal. I use it for a lot of different things. That's never really been something that you were able to do before with them. So for all 3 of their brands, which would be Norwegian Cruise Line, Oceania Cruises, and Regent Seven Seas, you can do this. This is the first time Norwegian is doing this, but Carnival has been allowing you to use PayPal since 2016. So it's a little bit of a catch-up where Norwegian is concerned. But, you know, like I said, I think any time they can expand the ways in which you can pay is a good thing because this is the modern world. This is how people do it now. I mean, I even my parents send me money via PayPal. Mom and Dad, I could use some money. Send me some via PayPal.
And if you're a true crime buff, this next cruise may be for you.
I'll admit I've never been tempted by a theme cruise, but they're a really hot ticket, right? All kinds of music-themed sailings. But in January of 2026, podcaster Wondery, who is, you know, sort of one of the biggest in the business, they're teaming up with Sixth Man, who are sort of the biggest in the themed cruise field, and they're putting together a true crime themed cruise, which sounds like an absolute blast. It's going to be hosted by John Walsh, who, you know, most true crime people know for being the host of America's Most Wanted. And it'll feature a slew of true crime podcasters. It's 4 days sailing out of Miami on the Norwegian Joy. And it'll feature a bunch of presentations as well as a murder mystery event, some trivia, self-defense classes, you know, because if you're going to be hunting down, if you're going to be one of those people who like tries to solve crimes in real life, you probably should have some self-defense. Honestly, it just sounds like a total blast. And more details will be released in the weeks to come.
All right, staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you, bud.
Glad to be here.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
Joining us now is president of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilkin, to talk about a couple of, trip insurance stories that have been sent to us on our tip line. You can always send yours in, tips@cruiseradio.net. Hey, Dan.
Doug, thank you very much. It's always great to be on, and love to help your listeners with any of their travel insurance questions.
This first story here, Dan, involves a pre-existing condition in a cruise line purchased policy. It has a lot of legal speak in it, so I'm going to let you set this one up.
For this discussion, you sent me one about a gentleman who just lost his wife to terminal cancer. And he had bought travel insurance in hopes that it would cover the loss of the vacation if he was unable to go because of his wife's condition. And my understanding is that the insurance company refused payment because of a pre-existing condition. They specifically say in their letter to him that a cancellation due to a condition that first presents, worsens, becomes acute, or has symptoms causing a person to seek a diagnosis, care, or treatment, or prompts a change in medication during the 60 days before the plan was purchased. This is about as formal and legal of a definition of a pre-existing condition as you'll find. That 60-day period of time is considered the look-back period for the pre-existing condition. And this is the first thing that you've got to evaluate when you're looking at a travel insurance plan. This is a fairly generous one. U.S. Fire provides a 60-day look-back. But there are a lot of other plans on the marketplace that have 120 days, almost a full 6 months, of a look-back period under which if you went to go see a doctor and got treated for a problem, that's going to be considered a pre-existing condition. Now, if you got, for instance, diabetes, or let's say you've got high blood pressure, or you've got AFib and the doctor has given you medication for it, and you haven't gone to see the doctor in that 6 month or 60-day period for any kind of treatment, and they haven't modified your medications, you just keep refilling your prescription, that's not going to be considered a pre-existing condition. But if you go to see the doctor for a problem, or you're getting treatment in the 60-day window just prior to purchasing a travel insurance plan, that's going to be considered a pre-existing condition. This is why you and I have talked quite a bit on your show on why you want to buy a travel insurance policy within 14 to 15 days of making your initial deposit on your trip. That's the initial deposit date is the very first day that you've made any payments. Either you bought airline tickets or you made a deposit on the cruise. You need to buy the travel insurance plan within 14 to 15 days and get a plan that has a pre-existing condition waiver. Many of the insurance plans sold by cruise companies, many of them don't have a pre-existing condition waiver because that's one of the key ways that an insurance company reduces the losses, the claims, and therefore they can reduce the cost of the insurance. Most travel insurance plans that you buy from a third party on a website, on a comparison website like tripinsurance.com, they're going to come with a pre-existing condition waiver that's going to cover you. So in this particular case, even though his wife was being treated in that period of time, had he bought the plan right away and bought a plan with a pre-existing condition waiver, then he would have been covered. The key point is that you have to be capable of traveling medically on the day you buy the plan. All the travelers have to be able to travel. So you can't have a situation where my spouse is really sick and I'm going to buy a cruise as an incentive for them to get well. A lot of people do that, and it's a great incentive. But if that spouse is not capable of traveling on the day you buy the cruise and you buy the insurance coverage, they may refuse a claim, even a pre-existing condition waiver, if they were not capable of traveling at that time. I feel very badly. First of all our sympathies and our thoughts, and I hope that his spouse's memories bring him comfort, and that if anybody else is out there shopping for insurance, this is something to consider.
This next story, Dan, a man from Minnesota took a cruise on NCL that he got for free. He got the flu when he was on board the ship. They put him in the infirmary. He had the insurance policy through the cruise line, but his bill was like a tune of almost $50,000.
the devil is in the details here. The medical coverage in the cruise company's plan was limited to about $20,000 in coverage. And what's interesting about these commercial plans that come from the cruise company is that this is typically written as a partnership between a travel insurance company and the cruise company. The reason I say it's kind of a partnership is because that there are certain forms of cancellation and certain periods after you make your deposit where the cruise company covers the claim and says, we'll either give you credit or we're going to give you your money back. And the insurance company is not on the hook for that. But for things like medical or travel delay or some of the other aspects of the plan, the insurance company is footing the bill for that. So those commercial plans are written in a very specific way, and they're designed, by the way, to eliminate some risks to get the cost of the plan lower. One of the risks that's always eliminated in that partnership and in writing a commercial plan is bankruptcy of the cruise company. They won't cover that. But all third-party travel insurance plans that you buy on the marketplace, not from the cruise company, will cover you for bankruptcy. So let's get back to this man's medical bill. I mean, the first thing, Doug, to discuss here is he goes down to the infirmary with the flu. Mm-hmm. And they keep him there. Is that normal, Doug? You know, typically, how do they handle people on board a cruise ship when they get sick?
I know every medical case is different, but they see you, they treat you, and send you back to your cabin to recover.
My other question was, if I keep you in the infirmary, will there be less of a chance that you infect other passengers? Because we're talking about pretty close quarters. Mm-hmm. And I can't guarantee you're going to stay in your room. When they send you to your room with norovirus or flu like this, and they tell you to stay in your room and they'll deliver things to your room, Doug, how do they keep you there?
I mean, it's the honor system. No one's going to, post up outside your door unless you're doing something criminal.
Okay. So that one of the ways they keep him from wandering around the ship and getting everybody sick with the flu is to keep him down in the infirmary. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not surprised at a $47,000 bill for 70 hours in the infirmary. The reason I say that is because anybody that's gone to an emergency room for even bumping their head and been in there for less than 5 hours in an emergency room anymore, it's a $36,000 bill. Part of the problem is because the customer in that particular regard is the insurance company, not the traveler. Mm-hmm. If it was the traveler, they might have some incentive to do this a lot cheaper, or they might have had an incentive to go to him and say, hey, look, if you can go back to your room now and you're feeling okay, then you should lay down in your room and that's going to save some money. But that's not what happened. So the first interesting part about this is that his coverage that he bought from the cruise company was limited to $20,000 in coverage on board the ship. And that, I'm sorry, is way too low. We don't recommend anybody take a cruise or leave the country with anything less than about $100,000 in medical insurance coverage, okay? And that's on our website. That's all the plans in the better or best class. We've got plans in what we would have defined as the good class of coverage. It's good, but those we only sell to people that need cancellation coverage for a trip inside the United States, mm-hmm. where they're not really worried about medical coverage because they've got their own private insurance to cover it. If you're going out of the country, you need a minimum of $100,000 in medical coverage, and I'm going to recommend a minimum of $250,000 in medical evac coverage. Mm-hmm. I think that his best case was that he asked, does he have sufficient coverage? And when they asked, do you have the travel insurance that comes with the cruise ship? And he said yes. And the saddest part about the whole story was the fact that they had his credit card number.
Yeah, and we say it all the time. Your Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, whoever your insurance provider is, United, it's not going to work on a cruise ship or if you're out of the country.
Exactly. And if you're on Medicare, a lot of people say, well, my Medicare Advantage plan or my Part G, my supplemental plan, well, that'll cover me if I'm out of the country. No, it doesn't really. Mm-hmm. There is a $250 deductible in that Part G plan for everyone, and it will cover an emergency room visit, but it will not cover you admitted to the hospital. Or if you broke a leg and they've got to set your leg and everything else like that, that's not necessarily, that's considered surgery and some other things like that. That's not necessarily covered. Mm-hmm. And so we try to tell our clients the best part about buying travel insurance is that you're absolutely sure that you're not going to bring home an unusual medical bill or a real loss as a souvenir on your trip.
Yeah.
Look, I can travel with confidence knowing that I'm covered.
Yeah.
And this guy unfortunately thought he was covered. He just wasn't covered enough.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Dan, any parting words?
Hey, if you've got any questions about travel insurance, if there is any way we can help, even if you haven't bought your insurance from us, feel free to write us at support@tripinsurance.com. Just send us an email at support@tripinsurance.com. We're happy to help. We've helped people try to understand why their claim was denied by an insurance company, how to get a better deal on travel insurance. Any questions you have, please let us know.
All right. I've been talking with Dan Skilkin, president of tripinsurance.com. As always, Dan, thank you for your time.
Doug, thanks for having me on.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Jeffrey just returned from a 6-night cruise on MSC Lirica. It was a cruise over in the Med. It went from Venice to Valencia, and he joins us on the line to talk about it. How you doing, my friend?
Doug, I'm great. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year. Happy to have you on the show to talk about Lirica, which I don't think we've talked about in years. So excited to hear your thoughts on one of MSC's, we'll say, older ships. So before we get to the Lirica itself, we're going to take a step back here. You live in Georgia, actually just north of us here in Jacksonville, and you decided to head on over to Europe for this 6-night Med cruise. Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take the leap?
We did. So we had cruised the MSC Seashore several months prior to this sailing. So I was familiar with MSC. I was very skeptical at first, but we had a great experience at a Port Canaveral on a previous cruise. We knew we were I'm an airline employee, so we kind of have to be a little flexible on where we're going to go on vacation, if that makes sense. So we booked the cruise, I think 4 or 5 days before the sailing, which my travel agent thought I was referring to like a year from now. I had to say no, like this Thursday, so we, so I had actually listened to your older episode on Lirica. So I was a little familiar with the ship. I knew it was an older ship, but we ended up flying into Zurich out of New York and then spent some time there and then took a train down to Venice before the sailing.
How was Venice in the crowds when you were sailing over there?
I had been to Venice prior, and it was not the greatest time of year to go, and it was flooding. So my whole impression of Venice was not very good, but we're fairly newlyweds. So I think this time around, the weather was perfect. It was not crowded. It was just what you see in the movies. So it was just the most perfect couple days in Venice for both of us, really. And this was my husband's first time there. Well, I booked a hotel near the port, Marghera. I've never sailed out of Venice before, so I mistakenly booked a hotel thinking I was going to be near the port, but I didn't realize you actually embark on the ship like closer into downtown Venice. So we ended up going back, kind of backtracking a little bit for embarkation, but it all worked out. It was very easy. Everything's pretty close together there.
Yeah, that was my next question for you, where I cut you off there. I was going to ask you if you actually stayed in Venice, and was that ship small enough to embark in Venice? But it sounds like you went to Marghera. Did you jump on the train to go back and forth?
So we there was a bus right beside our hotel. So we the hotel employees told us how to get on the bus. It was maybe 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Just to go back and forth.
So you get to Marghera, and it's time to embark MSC Lirica. How was the embarkation process there, and how long did it take you from the curb to the ship? That's an interesting question. So we get to the port, and we check in. And if you're interested in an MSC sailing, I would highly recommend you do their status match program. They status match my Hilton
status. So I was an automatic diamond with MSC before I even had taken my first cruise. So I kind of felt like I cheated the system a little bit, but they do a really good job on acknowledging status. So, you're immediately they know you're a diamond member. You go to a separate line pretty much anywhere you go if you're embarking or, tendering off the ship. But when we got there, they mentioned, okay, it's going to be several hours delayed because the ship cannot dock into Venice because of the dense fog that was in the area. So it's, kind of surprised, but they went ahead and took our luggage. And right where the port is, there's a little kind of like a monorail, almost like a Disney monorail that'll just take you one stop into downtown Venice. Mm-hmm. So we ended up just, giving them our bags. And we kind of had a bonus morning in Venice that was just wonderful. So it was kind of you just trying to make lemonade out of lemons. But so we had a few extra hours in Venice proper that we took full advantage of. But we came back to the ship. It was a little chaotic just because everyone was kind of in the same waiting area. And, people were kind of confused. And then they finally made an announcement that the ship had gotten there and they were disembarking everyone off the ship. So it was, we were probably, all in total, maybe 4 or 5 hours, but most of that was not spent waiting there just because they told us up front that would be a while.
How about since you were Diamond, the priority check-in line, was that existing?
They did. There were maybe 75 of us, in the priority line, mm-hmm. but we were the first ones to get on the ship. They kind of whisked us through with check-in. So it was pretty seamless, honestly. We went straight to our room. They the room keys were right outside the room. So the room was ready. So it was pretty easy once it started going. But I think a lot of that was because of our priority status. Sure. So you walk on board MSC Lirica. What were your first impressions of the ship? It's definitely older. It is not the newest, fanciest ship at all, which I knew that, going into it. We booked it super last minute because we were kind of going to be in the vicinity. And it had a very interesting itinerary, or that we thought anyway. But it's definitely an older ship, but it's taken care of. And I think that, you're not going to be wowed by the 2-story foyer, but, as soon as you got to the room steward was just fantastic. So I think, the room itself was huge, but it's definitely an older ship, but it seems like it's well taken care of. What kind of room did you book for this 6-night cruise, and what were your thoughts of it throughout the week? So we booked the deluxe suite Aurea, I guess the highest tier, mainly because the room seemed a lot bigger and it offered you the My Choice dining, so you didn't have to be pigeonholed into one of the 2 dining times. I just didn't want to be in a huge group of people I might not know. So I thought if we did the My Choice dining, it might be easier to kind of just snag a 2-person table, at dinner time. But we were very happy with it. We were on the top floor. There may have been 20, 24 rooms in that whole floor. And I don't think we ever heard a single person in the hallway. It was just very weirdly quiet. And I don't think it was a full ship. So none of the entire week, we didn't have any neighbors beside us in the rooms that we could see anyway. So like a year ago, you were on one of MSC's newest ships. So now you're on an older ship here. I'm not going to ask you to compare the staterooms, but did that stateroom feel dated? It's definitely dated. It doesn't seem dirty or, there's some wear and tear on the bathrooms. In that cabin, you had an actual bathtub. It was so large, though, that I think that kind of made up for its outdatedness a little bit. It had a huge couch, a very nice updated television, decent sized balcony. It was a really nice room to kind of relax in. And so I've been on some cruises prior where that might not be the case. So I think overall, there's so much storage in that room. We're pretty light packers just because we never know if we're going to make it on a flight or not. But if you had a lot of suitcases, there's storage closets everywhere in that room. Did you take advantage of the pillow menu? I didn't. I don't think we did actually. No. We did on our prior sailing, but this time, did they have a pillow menu? I think they did, but I don't think they were actually pretty comfortable. I thought they were more comfortable than the yacht club on the seashore. So I don't think I ever felt the need to, inquire on the other options, if that makes sense.
Does this package come with a, I don't even know if this ship even has one, but like a thermal suite pass for a day or such?
It did. It came with a thermal pass, I think the whole week, honestly. My husband went and used it some, and we used it every day on the seashore. But again, it's hard to compare the two because they took us on a tour of the, of the spa. And it's just very small. If you just want to relax on a lounger for a little bit, I think it's fine. But if you're looking for like, snow grottos or anything like that, this is not the ship.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, let's talk about dining on this 6-night cruise. We'll start at the buffet area on the Lirica. What were your thoughts of the food served throughout the week, and did it ever really feel too crowded for you?
The buffet definitely felt a little crowded for me. Anything more than like 10 people is probably too crowded for me. But at the peak times, it feels a little crowded. I think it's just because it's mainly a smaller buffet. The food was okay. We were so happy with the main dining room food. I didn't feel the need to necessarily go get there often. I mean, there's some desserts were quite good. Typically their pizzas and their pastas are really good. I think the seashore pizza was seriously some of the best I've ever had in the world. But this was good. It just wasn't, I think, what we were looking for. We were kind of like setting that, seashore in our mind. And then this was a little different. But the buffet was a little crowded. But honestly, the main dining room we were so happy with, we just kind of didn't go there very much. Just maybe outside the buffet is the pizza area, maybe just there, just for a quick slice on occasion. With
the package you booked, Oreo, however you pronounce it, is that you could do? Is it set or anytime, or is it just strictly anytime? Just come when you want to. Yeah, for dinner, it's just come whenever you want to. There's a specific restaurant. There's only 2 main dining rooms, but then your My Choice Dining guests are assigned to one dining room, and then anytime they're open, you just go and they will accommodate you. We were very happy. I mean, we had the same table every night, right by the water, just a 2-top table. So it felt very yacht club-ish, even though it was hardly the price of the yacht club. But they kind of knew when we were going to get here. They had our table for us. They knew what wines we were drinking. So it was just, very, very good experience for the My Choice. So you're on a European cruise line. You're sailing in Europe. I know that these cruise lines sometimes have a little bit of a food difference in taste from North American cruise lines. Could you tell a difference in what was being served? Oh, I think for sure. I think probably for the better. It's hard to kind of guess. Everybody's taste is a little different. But overall, I mean, we thought, some of the steaks might have not been what we're used to normally, but the pastas, the lamb, the ossobuco, it was all, we never had a bad experience or a bad meal. There's nothing like we didn't eat. It was, I think they really are strong in their Italian dishes, obviously. But yeah, I think if you're accustomed, I mean, I get to travel all over, so I guess I can eat anything. But overall, I thought the quality, I mean, the taste was, I think would be pretty good for anyone coming from wherever they're traveling from. How was the service in the main dining room? Absolutely amazing. I would go back on the ship just to have the waiters that we had for that week. They were truly the best. I mean, I hope they get to stay on, that ship because we'd love to see them again. They made you feel so, I've sailed with Disney prior, and I think these particular waiters were on that level quality. Mm-hmm. We're just so pleased with them. As far as dining outside of the main dining room, is there any type of grab and go places or comp places? Beside the buffet on the 2 sections, like one section has pizza and then one section has kind of like burgers, sandwiches, tater tots, things like that. There is one specialty restaurant, Kato Sushi, that we did have lunch in. If you're Diamond, or I think there's a new level even beyond Diamond, you get a specialty meal on your sailing. And they make it pretty easy. I mean, it was very easy to book. The specialty restaurant there's only one. It's Sushi Restaurant. And it's very small, maybe 6 or 7 tables. But we did have lunch there and it was excellent. We were a little skeptical, but it was so delicious and the service was equally as good. How did the entertainment stack up for this 6-night cruise? So in the main theater,
I would say it's probably a little geared towards maybe European taste. It wasn't really my thing. My husband wanted to go every night, so we would go for a little while at least. There's a little English pub near the theater that you could actually just go and grab a drink and still listen to the entertainment if you want the large theater. But honestly, we ended up going to those other smaller bars and just listening to, a pianist or just a trio or, smaller, like one solo musician. And they were actually really enjoyable. We really enjoyed this kind of smaller piano bar.
Did they have any comedy shows on board?
That's a good question. I do not know. I don't think I remember seeing that. We would have probably gone to that. I mean, most of it is in English at some point in the show. So I think it's a kind of the de facto, language that everybody uses. But, the comedy, I don't remember
Gotcha.
A specific comedian in English.
I know that med sailings can have very little to sometimes no sea days. So how were they if you had any?
Yeah, and that's why we like this itinerary, because we are a fan of sea days. I feel like if you don't have a sea day, every day just feels like you're being shuffled along and just you're spending more time just kind of going back and forth. There were 2 sea days, and it never felt crowded. It was very odd, honestly. Like, we would walk into a bar and there was not a single guest there. It's just the bartenders. I mean, which we're not complaining. We got a drink within seconds, but it was almost, I think it was about 2/3 full. So I think only about 1,500 guests were on the ship from what we were told, but it never felt really crowded. There's not an area that really bottlenecked like some cruises do. The elevators were never really an issue. So that was something that we just really loved about it.
What's the casino like as far as the smoke situation on MSC Lirica? Because some ships are smoking, some are non-smoking.
I knew you were going to ask this question. So I went by it several times. And one time we smelled a little smoky, and I don't know if that was just coming from the outside door. I never saw someone physically smoke in the casino, but at one time it did kind of, you felt like someone may have just smoked a cigarette, but it never felt, and you kind of do have to walk by the casino to access some areas, but it never felt like some do.
Okay.
And it was never crowded. It was kind of surreal. This one morning I just was playing a slot machine, and I think maybe one other person was in the casino. It was just very quiet.
All right, well, let's talk about your ports of call. You leave the Venice area. Your first port of call was what?
First port of call was Split, Croatia. I had never been there, so I was very excited about that. And we absolutely loved it. We can't wait to go back. We want to explore more of the country. It's kind of like wet our whistle on some places that we want to, go back to. But highly recommended Split.
Did you do any tours there or walk around Diocletian's palace?
Yes, we walked around the palace. We walked around. We pretty much did just our own tours the whole time. I'm just not a fan of getting in the crowd. I guess I'm that antisocial nowadays in my older age. But we just kind of do our own things. Or there's a website called Get Your Guide that we'll use when we do travel. But yeah, we went through the palace. It was, a lot of things were closed. It was a holiday that day. Which is a little bit of a bummer, but it was kind of nice because it was very quiet out. So it felt like we could actually cover more ground in that way.
Nice. And after Split, what was your port of call?
So the next port of call was Montenegro, which had never really been on my radar, but it's absolutely breathtaking going in and out of Montenegro from a cruise ship. I've been able to travel so many places, and it's really up there on the level of beauty that you see from the ship, coming and going. It's just stunning, really. The weather was pretty nasty, so we were only there maybe half the time we probably could have been. It was really cold and rainy. I guess that's probably why the cruises are cheaper in the fall, just because you never know what the weather's going to do. But we loved it. We'd love to go back. I took this photograph. Like, we had made friends on our floor that we're going to end up working with the same company, which is crazy. But they had sent us a bottle of champagne for our anniversary. And just watching the ship leave Montenegro with the champagne, it's truly, truly stunning. If you ever have the chance to cruise in there, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like sailing through Alaska. It's I'm going to sound really stupid now, but you're going through the Is it fjords going in there? Like the cliffs, the hills, right?
Yeah. You're just going through the cliffs and in these little small towns, and then just dawn breaks, and then you're just like you're aware of your surroundings out on the balcony, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, I was not expecting this. It's just and I haven't done Alaska yet. That's on our list for this year, hopefully.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think it would be about the same.
Yeah. Montenegro has some really good, if you're an outdoors person or a hiker, there's some really good hikes to do in Montenegro. Just make sure you have some comfortable shoes on, because there's some rocks and stuff on there.
Yes. I went on part of one, made it about 30 minutes, and the weather was deteriorating. And I was like, okay, we'll come back. But yeah, I can't wait to go back and do those in hopefully better weather.
You made it on the ship after Montenegro. What was your next port of call?
So the next day we had a sea day, and then we had a note on our bed saying that we were supposed to go to Civitavecchia in Rome, outside of Rome, but the weather was so bad they weren't able to get to Rome. So we had an unexpected stop in Naples instead of Rome. I think I was initially a little disappointed, but then I'd realized my husband had never been to Rome. I don't know if that's the best time just to go for a few hours.
Yeah.
I had never been to Naples, so we just kind of made the best of it and really had a good time.
Yeah, probably a good call, because if you were going to Rome, you would have to take the actual bus, which is like an hour and a half into Rome each way, and that cuts off your time significantly. So not a bad call for Naples.
Kind of how I took it. And that's what I was explaining to him. Just, I think we'll do Rome later on when we have a lot more time. Naples, actually, I'm very happy it actually ended up working out really well. We ended up going, just walk around Naples, and then went to Pompeii. And I didn't realize how big Pompeii was. I had always wanted to go as a kid, just studying, history, but you really need more time than what we probably had.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely come back. So this is kind of a teaser for that too. So we definitely want to go back and see the Amalfi Coast and a little more time at Pompeii.
So
and Herculaneum as well.
So by this point, the cruise has to be winding down. So any other ports of call?
It was just a sea day and then straight to Valencia. So it was kind of like a medium. It was a 6-night, which I don't think is very common. So it was just, 3 ports, 2 sea days, but it was perfect. The sea was very rocky. I mean, to the point that turbulence on an airplane doesn't even faze me. But this got me a little concerned. When you're on the 12th floor and you're seeing ocean spray on your balcony, it's like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Hard to walk. I mean, it was really rough. So that next day, I think we were just all kind of the day in Naples, we were just exhausted, just because I don't think anybody on that ship slept very much that night before.
With this ship operating a ferry schedule with different embarkation ports, how was the debark process? And I know you mentioned you travel light, so did you just carry off?
We could have. We ended up just we had some carry-ons that we just, set out the room, tag the bags and just let them take that the night before. And then we just had backpacks the next day. And then they just have it divided out into groups. So we were in the priority group, quote unquote. So we were in the Lord Nelson English pub, so we all just met there. And then, the staff was so good. We had this one lady every morning we would go get cappuccinos or lattes. And, one of our friends' birthday was that day. She insisted, she walked downstairs to bring us the coffee while we waited to disembark, and then brought Prosecco and mimosas. I mean, they're just normally trying to rush you off the ship, but the service just really extended, just to the final moment too, we thought.
You're off the ship. You're looking back at your cruise here. Any first-time tips you have someone to offer, maybe wanting to do a short MSC cruise as a sampler, or just sailing MSC for the first time?
I think if you're sailing out of anywhere in the States, definitely give them a try. I think they're definitely improving their product. I was super skeptical of them on my first sailing. They won me over. I'm still definitely sailing other cruise lines as well. If you can status match, if you have any status with a hotel or other cruise line, definitely get that done before you sail, because it'll definitely save you some time and money in a lot of cases. I think just have, just manage your expectations. It's a different carrier, and I think they're still kind of feeling out what the North American market needs or wants. Mm-hmm. I think the European cruises are a little different. I mean, The staff was the staff was just so great. I mean, overall, I think, knowing we were going to go into an older ship, it's a little more dated. But I mean, overall, we would definitely go back to this ship or to MSC again, just because the staff and the food is just really, really happy. We're happy with them, honestly.
Well, it sounds like you may have hit on a couple of them already, but what were some of the biggest highlights of this cruise for you?
Oh my gosh, definitely the service. I mean, I think that's where they shine. I mean, just because, the ship is older. It was so easy to walk around. It's kind of nice to go from a big ship to a smaller ship because it just feels like you're not constantly getting lost. By the time you kind of know where you're going, it's time to get off the ship for good, So I think it's a little easier to navigate this ship, which I really enjoyed. It's, it's just kind of nice to have just a short walk to dinner instead of, trying to figure out how to go down 8 floors and then walk up half a mile. It's just a lot more, manageable. With the weather, I mean, I think if you're sailing in the late fall like we did in the Mediterranean, you just kind of have to know weather's going to be super iffy. So it could be rougher seas. A lot of the outdoor activities are not going to be applicable, or some of the things the ship might have. But I just think go open-minded. I think we had the best time, and we had a great week just because we had no expectations. I mean, we booked this so last minute that we were just ended up being very pleased with them.
For the price you paid, how would you rate the value of the cruise?
Oh, definitely good. I mean, absolutely good. We, I don't know if it would have been cheaper if we had booked much further ahead. I mean, it feels like the days of getting a really last minute cruise deal is maybe over, but we were very happy with the amount we paid, especially compared to some other cruises we had taken before.
And closing here, final thoughts of MSC Lirica.
Highly recommend. Just go in with an open mind. Don't expect the latest and greatest. It's not going to have a golf simulator or Wolfgang Puck restaurant, but it's, this genuine, honest service, really good European food. Everything felt fresh. Nothing felt, older as far as the food and the beverages go. Really, really great ship to have just a relaxing week with your friends or family.
We've been talking with Jeffrey about his latest sailing on MSC Lirica. Jeffrey, good talking to you, my friend, and thank you so much for sharing your vacation with us.
Oh, thank you, Doug. We're huge fans of your show. Thank you for all you do.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,